The story begins with a fashion designer, Michelle, who hurriedly packs a suitcase. Living in New Orleans, she steps out of her home for the last time, determined to escape the life she's known, leaving behind her keys and a diamond ring on the table. She drives out of the city, her mind weighed down by troubles. As evening falls, she stops at a gas station to fill up her car. A suspicious truck pulls up behind her, but she chooses to ignore it and continues on her way. While on the road, Michelle receives a call from Ben, her ex-fiancé. He pleads with her to come back, but Michelle remains silent, still upset from the argument that led to her sudden departure. Growing tired of his pleas, she ends the call and switches on the radio, where the news reports a widespread blackout caused by a power surge in the city. Just as Ben tries to call her again, something crashes into her car, causing it to flip off the road and into a ditch. Michelle wakes up in a small, cold room with concrete walls. Her leg is injured and chained to the wall, and the chain digs painfully into her skin. The dim power flickers on and off, making everything feel even more unsettling. She panics and tries desperately to break free, but the shackles won't budge. Overwhelmed, Michelle starts to cry quietly as the reality of her situation sinks in, but she refuses to be a victim. Michelle quickly scans the room, and her eyes land on an IV pole next to the bed. She grabs it and uses it to reach her phone, which is lying in a far corner. After some effort, she pulls the phone toward her, but her hopes are crushed when she realizes there's no signal. Suddenly, she hears heavy footsteps echoing through the walls, getting closer and closer to her room. Instinctively, Michelle hides under a blanket, bracing herself for whatever's coming. The door opens, and a large man named Howard walks in, holding a plate of food with a gun tucked in his belt. Fear spikes through Michelle and she begs for her life, but Howard stays cold and emotionless. He silently adjusts her IV bag, ignoring her pleas. Howard tells her calmly that he's only there to keep her alive. He hands her a pair of crutches and tells her to practice walking to regain her strength. When Michelle tries to bluff, saying her fiancé will alert the police, Howard dismisses her with chilling confidence, saying no one is looking for her. He tosses her the key to the chains before leaving the room. As soon as Howard is gone, Michelle frees herself from the shackles and quickly gets dressed. She tries the door, but it's locked tight. Refusing to give up, she sharpens the end of one of the crutches with the key, turning it into a makeshift weapon. Thinking fast, she opens the vent in the room and sets her shirt on fire, hoping the smoke will trigger the fire alarm and force Howard to return. Ready to fight, Michelle positions herself by the door, crutch weapon in hand. The moment Howard opens the door, she lunges at him, but he's faster. He easily overpowers her and injects a sedative into her arm, sending her back into darkness. Michelle wakes up in the same small concrete room, this time with a plate of food waiting for her. Howard is there too, complimenting her on her resilience, but insisting that she should be thankful he found her. Desperate, Michelle pleads for her freedom again, but Howard coldly tells her there's nowhere else for her to go. Howard starts explaining how he saved her from the car crash, saying that a catastrophic event, a possible nuclear attack, has made the air outside toxic. He assures her that they're safe in his bunker, but warns it could be years before it's safe to go outside. Trying to reason with him, Michelle thanks him for saving her but insists she needs a hospital. This only frustrates Howard more. He snaps that the outside air is contaminated and that any hospital is long gone. When she asks to call her family, Howard grimly replies that everyone outside is probably dead. Suddenly, a noise from outside the room catches Michelle's attention. Realizing there's someone else in the bunker, she presses Howard for answers, but he ignores her, locking her back in the room before leaving to deal with the commotion. Hours later, Michelle wakes up to find the door to her room open. Cautiously, she steps out into a hallway lined with shelves packed full of supplies. In the hallway, Michelle meets the bunker's other resident, a younger man named Emmett who has an injured arm. Michelle quickly brings up the idea of escaping, but Emmett, much like Howard, is convinced that the air outside is lethal. Howard soon joins them and explains that the noise Michelle heard was Emmett accidentally knocking over a shelf of food. Howard then gives them a tour of the bunker, showing off a common area filled with DVDs, books, and other entertainment. He lays down some strict rules, emphasizing a no-touch policy to keep order. As he shows Michelle his private room, which also has the only bathroom in the bunker, he tells her to take a shower. Even though Michelle asks for privacy, Howard decides to stand guard by the door, saying he doesn't trust her yet. Later, while preparing a meal, Howard mentions someone named Megan, though he vaguely says she's no longer with them. As they talk, the power flickers again. Michelle suggests it might be caused by a car passing overhead, but Howard dismisses the idea, insisting no one is up there. Sensing Michelle's doubt, Howard takes her to the exit and shows her a small window looking outside. Through it, Michelle sees the decaying bodies of pigs, which Howard claims died from the poisoned air. As Michelle scans the field, her eyes lock onto Howard's truck, and she suddenly realizes it's the same truck that ran her off the road. Suspicion toward Howard starts to grow, and she begins confiding in Emmett, sharing her belief that Howard deliberately crashed her car to kidnap her. Emmett, however, is skeptical. He recalls how on the day of the attack he saw a massive explosion and, fearing for his life, fought his way into the bunker, injuring his arm in the process. Emmett is convinced Howard's apocalyptic theories are correct, leaving Michelle even more unsure of who she can trust. Michelle insists to Emmett that she heard a car passing above the bunker earlier, but before discussing it further, Howard interrupts, inviting them to dinner. At the dining table, Michelle can't shake the uneasy feeling, wondering if Howard heard her conversation. Her eyes drift, and she notices the exit key tied to Howard's waist. Sensing the tension, Emmett tries to lighten the mood with casual talk, and it works. Michelle relaxes a little, but Howard's frustration is clear, and eventually, he snaps at Emmett, saying he wants to eat in silence. Noticing how quickly Howard gets irritated, Michelle starts to form a plan. She begins paying more attention to Emmett, talking to him in a way that seems flirty. As the interaction continues, she can see Howard's annoyance turning into outright anger. When Michelle boldly touches Emmett's hand, Howard loses control. He slams his fist on the table and corners Michelle, accusing her of disrespecting him. Emmett tries to calm things down, but is clearly intimidated by Howard's fury. After the tension eases, they all sit down again. Michelle quietly takes Howard's keys and hides them under the table. Just then, the sound of a car rumbling overhead grabs everyone's attention. Seizing the moment, Michelle smashes a bottle over Howard's head, dazing him. She scrambles over the table and runs towards the bunker's exit. With shaking hands, Michelle fumbles with the locks on the first door, managing to open it just as Howard starts to recover and comes after her. She barely manages to shut the door behind her before he can reach her. As she works on the second door, she spots a car outside, sparking hope. Michelle frantically calls for help while continuing to struggle with the locks. But just as she's about to get out, a woman suddenly appears at the door. Her skin is covered in horrifying lesions, and she's desperately begging Michelle to let her in. Howard, catching up to Michelle, shouts at her not to open the door, warning her that the woman is infected. Suddenly, the terrifying possibility that Howard might be telling the truth hits Michelle. The woman outside becomes frantic, banging her head against the glass while Michelle stands frozen in fear as everything spirals out of control. After the troubling event at the airlock, Michelle is locked in the concrete room again. Eventually, Howard comes in, his attitude surprisingly softer, as if he needs to confess something. He explains that he accidentally crashed into her car while rushing back to the bunker after hearing about an imminent attack. Trying to make her relax, Howard offers Michelle some clothes that once belonged to his estranged daughter, Megan. After showering, Michelle finds herself in a tense situation as Howard insists she stitches up the wound she caused on his face. As she carefully tends to him, Howard starts talking about the woman outside the airlock, explaining that she was a neighbor named Leslie who might have known about his bunker. He then opens up about Megan, sharing that she was taken to Chicago by her mother years ago, and he hasn't seen her since. Later, Emmett and Michelle grow closer, sharing stories from their past. Emmett talks about how he was once a promising athlete, accepted to Louisiana Tech University for track, but fear of failure kept him from going. This leads Michelle to share a painful memory, how she once saw a young girl being mistreated by her father in a store and did nothing to help, frozen by her own fears from a difficult childhood. In the days that follow, the three of them settle into an uneasy routine, finding brief moments of friendship in the small bunker. But the peace doesn't last long. One day, the bunker shakes violently, and they hear helicopters overhead as the power flickers. Howard speculates that it could be the military, but it might just as well be the enemy searching for survivors. Suddenly, an alarm blares, signaling a problem with the air filtration system. Howard tells Michelle to climb into the vents to restart the system since she's the only one small enough to fit. Crawling through the tight, dark space is stressful, but Michelle reaches the mechanical room and resets the system, relieved when the air flows again. But then she notices a ladder leading up to a hatch. Curious, she climbs up and finds a small window with the word "Help" scratched into it, the letters faintly stained with blood. On the ground, she finds a pair of earrings, and a chill runs through her as she recognizes them. They're the same ones in a photo Howard showed her of Megan. Back in the main bunker area, Michelle discreetly shows the earrings to Emmett, then pulls out the photo Howard had shown her earlier, claiming it was his daughter Megan. Emmett immediately recognizes the girl, not as Megan, but as Brittany, a classmate of his sister's who went missing 2 years ago. Michelle then tells him about the word help she found scratched on the window and points out that it was made using those same bloody earrings. As they talk, another photo slips out of Howard's book. This one showing Brittany and Howard together, with Brittany wearing the same shirt Michelle now has on. The horrifying truth becomes clear. Howard isn't just an overprotective survivalist. He's a dangerous man with a dark past. Emmett and Michelle start planning how to subdue Howard and escape. But as they talk, Michelle asks a troubling question. Who would they even hand him over to if anyone is still alive out there? Their conversation is interrupted when Howard suddenly tells Michelle to prepare for another shower. While getting ready, Michelle stares at the shower curtain, an idea forming in her mind. She quickly sketches a plan on a magazine and later shows it to Emmett, convincing him to join her in a risky escape plan. Later that night, Emmett quietly takes a pair of scissors from the kitchen. He then makes up a story to convince Howard that Michelle might have contaminated the bathroom after fixing the air filtration system. Howard believes him and throws away the shower curtain, but Michelle secretly retrieves it. Feeling the urgency, Michelle starts putting together a homemade hazmat suit using materials from the bunker, planning for one of them to go outside and seek help. While they're playing a board game, Emmett becomes visibly nervous, which raises Howard's suspicions. Later, as Michelle continues working on the suit, Howard suddenly walks into the room, giving her just enough time to hide what she's been doing. He asks her to come upstairs to help with something. The three of them move a heavy barrel from the kitchen to Howard's room. Howard reveals the barrel contains a powerful acid that can dissolve almost anything, even human remains. The tension rises as Howard starts questioning them about his missing tools, threatening to use the acid on them if they don't confess. To protect Michelle, Emmett lies, saying he took the tools to make a weapon because he wanted Michelle to respect him like she respects Howard. He insists Michelle wasn't involved. Howard accepts his apology, but shockingly, he shoots Emmett in the head. Paralyzed with fear, Michelle watches in horror as Howard cradles her, claiming Emmett was a threat to her and that he did what was necessary. He then tells her to return to her room while he deals with Emmett's body. Alone, Michelle mourns Emmett, holding his ID and reflecting on the bus ticket he never used for college. Determined to honor his memory, she decides to carry out their escape plan alone. Michelle continues working on the hazmat suit, making it as airtight as possible. Just before Howard calls her for dinner, she hides the gas mask in the vent. But as Howard enters the room, a screw from the vent cover falls to the floor. Howard notices the loose screw and becomes suspicious. He inspects the area and finds part of the suit sticking out from under her mattress. Furious, he drags her off the bed, exposing the suit. Thinking quickly, Michelle locks Howard in the room and frantically searches his quarters, grabbing a chemical coolant. Howard breaks free, but Michelle kicks the barrel of acid toward him, causing him to fall. The acid begins to burn him, and as he writhes in pain, she climbs over his body and rushes toward the exit. The acid eats through an electrical wire, starting a fire that spreads quickly through the bunker. Michelle hurries to her room, grabs the hazmat suit and gas mask, and heads toward the exit. But Howard, half burnt but still moving, comes after her. Michelle knocks a shelf over onto him, slowing him down enough for her to escape. But the spreading fire blocks her path to the main exit, forcing her to crawl into the vent system to reach the mechanical room hatch. Inside the tight vent, Michelle hears Howard coming after her, stabbing a knife through the metal to try and reach her. She narrowly escapes his grasp and finally reaches the mechanical room, where she quickly puts on the hazmat suit, sealing it with duct tape. She climbs the ladder to the hatch, uses the chemical coolant to freeze the padlock, and after several tries, breaks the lock and opens the hatch, ready to face whatever's outside. Above ground, the sun is shining and everything seems peaceful. Michelle spots Howard's truck and rushes to it, but in her hurry, she tears her homemade hazmat suit. Panicking, she quickly fixes it with duct tape. As she finishes, she hears birds overhead and realizes the air might be safe. She removes her mask and takes a deep breath, relieved that the air is fresh. Climbing onto the truck, Michelle looks around and sees what she thinks is a helicopter in the distance. Suddenly, the bunker explodes behind her, taking Howard with it and catching the attention of the aircraft. As it gets closer, Michelle's relief turns to horror. It's not a helicopter, but a huge alien hovercraft. It drops something ominous to the ground before flying away. Desperate, Michelle jumps into the truck, frantically searching for the keys but finds none. Remembering Leslie's car, she runs toward it, but the car alarm goes off, attracting a nearby alien creature. Panicking, she retreats to a shed. From her hiding spot, she watches in fear as the alien lifts the car and starts attacking the shed. Michelle searches Leslie's body and finally finds the keys just as the alien peeks into the shed. She quickly turns off the car alarm and the alien leaves. Taking her chance, Michelle crawls out through a small door and runs toward the farmhouse. But as she gets close, the giant alien craft appears overhead, releasing toxic green gas. Michelle quickly puts on her mask just in time. The smoke clears, and she spots an alien creature approaching. Panicked, she rushes into the truck. The alien craft moves closer, lifting the truck off the ground. Thinking quickly, Michelle finds a magazine, a lighter, and a whiskey bottle inside the truck. She makes a firebomb, and as the creature's mouth opens to pull her in, she throws the fiery bomb inside. The alien explodes, and the truck crashes to the ground. Shaken but alive, she spots Leslie's car, which is in good condition, and stumbles back to it. With the keys in hand, she starts the engine and drives away, knocking over Howard's mailbox, which bears the address 10 Cloverfield Lane. As she drives, the car radio crackles to life, announcing that the southern seaboard has been retaken and directing survivors to Baton Rouge. The broadcast also asks for those with combat or medical skills to head to Houston. Reaching a crossroads, Michelle pauses, thinking about her options. Determined, she turns left, heading toward Houston to join the fight against the alien invaders. As she drives, a thunderclap reveals a larger alien hovercraft looming in the clouds, signaling that the battle is far from over. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. We've got a lot of great content coming your way. Take care and see you again.